Hi there, Christian Henson from Spitfire Audio here with a quick walk through the demo I did for the Phobos trailer. Now, usually I would score that to picture, but flatteringly they edited it to my music, and they actually edited my music a little bit to fit the picture. So I can't put it up because it'll go out of sync. So we'll just concentrate on how I approached my first outing with Phobos. Now, if you look at the screen here, you'll see that we have all of these green regions. Now, those are the orchestral stuff that isn't part of Phobos, and this is a good demonstration of how orchestral material and something like Phobos combines. But you'll then see all of this blue stuff, and it really is, I'm really punishing my system with loads of instances of Phobos. Now, it's a polyconvolution synth, which basically means there are 3 convolution sources, but there is a different convolution engine for every voice, and that's how you can pitch the convolutions. They'll track the keyboard, but also that's how the loops within the convolutions will track the tempo as well. So really quite a complicated piece of kit, and I can report on my system, which is, let's have a look here, about this Mac. It's a couple of years old, maybe 4 years old actually. It's a pretty powerful Mac, but it's nothing super special. So I'm really delighted that I've not had a single crash caused by Phobos, he says. Hitting save. Okay, so let's just have a quick look at the orchestral, but I won't dwell on this because you've seen me do all this a million times before. But it's basically a mixture of chamber flautandos, tundra flautandos, and some consorts from symphonic strings. I've also used the performance legato from the first violins, which joins up, and I love the portamento. So I've used a lot of that. So that's all been recorded in the hall at Air. So let's... Very nice stuff. And I'm also using a little bit of the VSS3 by TC, the large warm hall, which is the real kind of classic that is used on so many film scores. I've then layered in a bit of the London Contemporary Orchestra, which interestingly is recorded in a different room, a much drier space, but with the VSS3 it really blends quite well. And last but not least, I've used some symphonic brass French horns playing what has to be the world's most boring French horn part. Amazing sound. That's just A2 for horns, so just 2 of them playing there. So let's dive into Phobos. Now, I guess we'll start with one of the more simple angles, which is what I always do, is put some super bass under the strings and stuff. And for that, I created this sound, which doesn't really use the convolutions. It's basically, if we just mute those off, it's this analog sound, analog 45. Oh, beautiful. And this one, which has a slightly slower attack, so it kind of develops the sound a bit. Great fat sound, which I've added a bit of more fatness to the tune of 12 dB. I'm such a tart, so let's have a listen to that and how that works. Great stuff. Now, there's an enormous drone on this, another one of my efforts creating presets, and this really does use the convolution engines, just the 2 of them, W and X. So it's comprised of 4 different sounds. Let's just go through those. Now, if you listen to this one, it doesn't play. That's because it's fully driving the convolution, and we're not listening to any dry signal whatsoever. So if I just hit the dry input, it sounds like that. And if I just unmute the convolutions, it has a slightly more modulated sound. Now, if I then unmute all of these, you'll see how they drive these two convolutions here and here. I'm going to turn this one up. So it really does make for quite an extraordinary collection of sounds there. We've also got this thing called Flatliners, which I think is one of BT's. Great stuff. I also created a really epic boom, and I did this from a loop. And then this amazing sound, which I've called Engage Your Audience. I think that's one of the beauties of Phobos. It's got some really super fat BT stuff, but I'm also interested in these little engaging molecular loops, as BT would call them. So whilst this sequence looks quite simple, there's also a lot of automation going on. I basically, for this trailer, I'm going to put Phobos in my workflow and see if I can break her. So there's a lot of stuff that I could map within Phobos and automate, but this is my workflow. I'm going to go like the clappers, like I usually do, putting all of my fave plugins on and see how that whole thing stands up. So in the case of this bit, you'll see that I've got a whole selection of stuff. Now this is one of Richard Devine's mental presets. So let's have a listen to it without any of my stuff on. Let's just see how that's all broken up. Nice decay there. That tonal bit, this one that I was just playing, the kind of sidechain compressed tone, proved a little bit problematic to me, so I wanted to bring it under control. So what I added in was a single band EQ, basically doing a low pass filter, sorry, a high pass filter. Logic has changed the naming, so it says low cut, which is a high pass filter. I find it really confusing. So what I've essentially done is kept the insecty part of it, which I'm really enjoying. Okay, and then I've put my favourite plugin, which is the Logic Distortion one. So then what I wanted to do was find a loop that filled in the gaps. So with this CH Pimp loop, let me again take this stuff off. So one of the first things I did was boost the bottom end. Bit of distortion. And a bit of sub bass just because I can. So obviously that's going to step all over the... So I've also automated the bits that the other one doesn't have the kind of bottom end. So we put a high pass filter in this one. Let's have a listen to that. Now, the reason it doesn't have much kick drum there is I introduce a third loop. Which again might have just a little bit of distortion on it. And let's have a look at that one. So that's called Worlds Collide. And it has kind of quite a Miami Vicey feel about it, which I like. So that's just dry. It's not using any of the convolutions because nothing's loaded in them. There's a runaway hi-hat there. And then I use this loop as a little kind of fill loop. So let's have a look at that. And that again has some HPF on as well. So nothing going on, nothing going on. And then a little answering phrase. So if we combine all of those, it sounds a bit like this. Oopsie daisies. Then finally, I've got this massive bass, which let's just take all of this mentalness off. It's great use of the convolutions there. So a lovely analog sound, but then if you put in but obviously we wanted to distort that because I like distorting things. This is when a convolution runs away with itself. I've done some single EQ, which is the HPF again, made it even fatter with the channel EQ, and then what I've done is I've put the compressor on a side chain to bus 8, and I've selected some of those drum loops to basically pump the bass so it gets out of the way for the kick drums and stuff. Then at the very end, you'll hear I've automated some tremolando, so it goes like this. Quite a nice way of doing a very quick glitch edit. So that's that section. So let's just hear the bass pumping against the drums. Scaring children the world over with this crazy business. Then we've got these great sounds made by BT, which are kind of these cluster swells, which I'm using. And you can hear it's kind of distorting my bass at the end then, but I just push things until I go, that sounds silly. And I've done some really hard automation there, just with volume, so it kind of sucks as the next section comes in. So I've got those featuring throughout. Now there's a great pad here. So I think for pads that have more than one note, I often find that actually major keys work better. Oh, it's just absolutely great stuff. And then we've got some more loops to play. So this was a loop that I created, and this is when I really first started getting my head around putting loops in the convolution source units. So if you have a listen to this. that kind of is actually being created by the convolution. So if I take that out, and then with, so it adds all sorts of really fascinating elements. And then I've got a thing called chaosism. So an interesting collection of loops, but it's not really until you put the convolutions in. Insane. So it's like the loop goes into the convolution and it wraps it round its kind of loopy bit. And yes, I think it's absolutely fascinating. It took a while for the convolution thing to click whilst I was making the presets. There's about 700 presets in there to get you cracking. But when I cracked it, it was I was just absolutely delighted. Let's just check out what this is. And this is another chaosism. Okay, and then on to the last bit, which is kind of quite Bristol-y, I think. Again, without the convolutions. Really does create stuff that I've never ever heard before. Really something else. Yes, sir, I will have that beat, and it's a very kind of Dark Horses, it's called. It has a real Bristly feel to me, that. And then done a Craig Armstrong rip-off string line at the top. So a bit of a pimped loop there, again with a lot of distortion and filtering going on. It's just to dig out my favourite bits of the loop and make them curl their way around the different loops that are playing. And then I've got these loops just as the end of phrases. And finally, it's a bass sound here, which is, again, something that I created and then totally saturated. So let's have a listen to it. So I hope this quick look at my demo gives you an idea of the power of the convolution concept within Phobos, but also an idea of the sheer amount of content that BT has put into this. It is, I believe, he's been putting these into his archives for about 15 years. It's about 20 gigabytes of stuff. Now, if you consider these aren't sampled, they've not got loads of notes on, they don't have multiple microphones, they don't have round robins. These are just amazing loops, amazing analog sound. So 20 gigabytes is like, it's the Ark of the Covenant for this kind of material. And me, myself, will be using it to really kind of, as I say, engage your audience with synth sounds that you've never heard before, but also these incredible loops. You know, whilst in this they're massively fat, you can just use them to kind of percolate and tickle away your cues, especially if a director's just come in and gone, it's dragging a bit for me. Well, you don't have to change the tempo, you don't have to change your arrangement. You put these things on and they'll add a momentum that's quite extraordinary. Last thing I just want to say, which you probably heard if you've heard this demo before, I put masses of stuff on the master bus. That was something I prepared earlier. So just chop the very bottom off to make the mix more effective. Some of the mids were getting a little bit, ooh, so I just made a bit of a smile sound there with a bit of top, the high mids, then massive amount of compression, and then the louderizer from Waves. Okay, so let's run this down and see what you think. Thanks very much for watching, and see you next time. Bye.